Welcome to Android Authority on Air, the original Android Hangout show on Google+. I'm Derek Ross.
I'm Scott Anderson.
And I'm Dan Charlton.
And I'm Jonathan Franklin.
This week we're going to talk about how Apple launched a new Android experience platform, and we're all switching to it. I kid. We're going to talk about some Google acquisitions, our Cruiser Lite contest results. Scott's going to hit up his favorite thing, some Android app updates. And John's going to talk about some devices. We're going to talk about some industry news and rootin' and ramen. And then we're going to wrap up the show by actually really talking about iOS 7 and what we think about it as Android users, since we know that our bread and butter, our staple, Google Plus, pretty much hated on iOS 7 the last couple days. So we're going to let you know what we truly think about it. All right, so let's get started. First, I want to start out by saying a little public service announcement. If you signed up for Google Play Music All Access on the day it was officially launched, which was the first day of Google I/O, May 15th, if you signed up that first day, your free 30-day trial is going to expire tomorrow, and you're going to start getting billed. So you need to make a decision tonight if you want to keep the service or if you want to get rid of it. If you waited a day or two before you started the trial, then you have another day. An easy way to determine when your all-access trial ends, if you want to cancel it, is to open up the app, go into settings, and right in settings it'll tell you when your billing period begins, or visit the app on the Play Store. It'll list subscription and when the billing period begins. Real quick prices on that if you don't remember. It's $7.99 until June 30th, and then after that it goes up to the full price of $9.99. So you have 15 days really to decide if you want to save $2 a month. I'm going to do it. I've never purchased a music subscription before. I've never, bought Spotify, never bought Pandora, any of the others. But I like Google Music, and I've always liked it, and I've actually found a lot of music through it, the past month. So I'm going to buy it. I'm going to, it's only $8 a month. I think that's not going to break my bank, and I like the service, so I'm going to do it. How about you, Dan? Have you been using it?
I used it for a little while, and I like it. I've never really tried any of the other big music streaming services, so I guess I don't really have a frame of reference for it. Ultimately, though, I just don't listen to enough music to justify spending $8 or $5 a month on it. I just wouldn't get that much value out of it.
Okay. John, how about you? What are you going to do with All Access? Have you been using it? You going to buy it?
I have been using it. I was a Spotify subscriber. I do like the fact that this kind of merges together the music in my own collection with streaming. So to me, that in itself makes it more convenient. So I'm probably going to continue the subscription. And the predictive aspect of it really makes it better too.
All right, and Scott, I see your bed is not made. We're talking about that first.
I went to the place that I learned how to do it, and now I just need to implement it.
You forgot already.
Yeah.
All right, so back to All Access Music. Are you going to have you been using it? You going to buy it?
I haven't been using it in kind of the same sense of as Dan. I can't really justify that amount of money going to something that I don't use a lot, like Netflix. If Google had some type of video subscription thing, I would justify it because, hey, I watch a lot of TV and movies and all that type of video content, but audio is more of an on-the-go thing, and I'm not on the go as much as I used to be, so, yeah.
Okay.
Video subscription
That's not bad, though. Out of the four of us, 50% are going to stick with it. I use it every day going to work and coming home to work, so I'm going to, that's worth it to me. I got an hour drive each way. All right.
I know that it's like a new service, but I wonder if anybody's watching this. Are you guys going to subscribe to it, and are you going to get it before June 30th?
Yeah, let us know in the comments what you think about All Access if you're going to buy it in the next few days. They'd be interested to see if you're, if it's 50-50, kind of like the Android Authority on Air team. All right, so continuing on with ecosystem news, Google bought popular crowdsourcing GPS navigation app company Waze for $1.3 billion. And now, Scott, you had said you actually have used Waze before, so you want to talk a little bit about that?
It's pretty much like a crowdsourcing navigation system. If you were to see an accident on someplace and you're going really, really slow, you would report that. Or let's say there's a blocked road that has, that doesn't have access on one side of the road, you can report that and it'll, divert you around there. Whereas with Google Maps, it doesn't really have that because it's not to the second updated. It is updated with like places and details and stuff like that, but like with regards to directions, Waze really excels in that.
So the social traffic, reporting aspect of it, do you think that we might, do you think that would be beneficial to see that in Google Maps in the future?
I think it'll be some type that they'll have to integrate some type of thing like that with regards to navigation. I don't know how they would do it though, because I've used the app and it's somewhat bloated in the sense of reporting. There's just a lot of stuff going on with that app. I mean, you can do a lot of stuff with it, but with more things, it gets really hard to put it on such a small device and screen that it's really difficult. So they might do some things. What do you guys think?
I think for navigation, Glass to me is a better platform to do that with, because Glass gives you all those tools to actually report to something like Waze instantaneously. Like you can say, okay, Glass, take a picture. It's already location and context aware. So you could say, take a picture and upload this to the social aspect of it, and then it's a done deal. You don't have to pull your phone out and go through all these context menus. If you just notify Glass real quick, I think that's a better navigational experience than on a phone by default. So
if you see a traffic accident, you would use Waze on Glass to take a picture of the accident and upload it, you're saying?
Yeah, it'd just be lightning fast. It wouldn't be an inconvenience to let people know what's going on.
One thing that
I think they're
isn't Waze like a contextual app? Like, doesn't it learn your route or something like that?
Yeah, it can.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think Google's after the data more than the app. I mean, Scott, you commented on it being bloated, but I don't think they're looking to replace Maps with Waze. I think they're looking to suck in all of the Waze data and the easy ways that users can submit that data and just bolster Maps with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's got about a user base of about 50 million, and that user base, Google would like that.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, so if you use Waze, I know some of you are already commenting, saying that you do use Waze and you like it. So let us know, if you use Waze, if you're excited about this acquisition, if you're excited to see some type of Googleification of Waze or integration in the current apps. All right, so let's talk about a contest. All right, so we, Android Authority, had a Cruiser Lite contest giveaway this past week. Up for grabs were 20 different $10 gift codes where you can go to cruiserlite.com and use the $10 off on a purchase of your favorite phone case for your favorite Android phone. They have cases for all the popular phones, even the Galaxy S4. They got some new exoskeleton, hardened cases, as well as the standard, Androidified TPU cases. They're really nice cases. So if you didn't win, I would say check them out, cruiserlite.com. Sorry, so let's get to the winner. So just in case you're watching right now, I'm going to read off 20 names. I will be contacting you over the next day or so and giving you your gift code. So from the top, we got Chris Holt, Ryan Moore, CMS Schold, Sean Roth, Greg Mency, Mondo, Josh Fisher, SoFlow Easy Core. There you go. Neil Lund. Hey, he's a fellow Google Pluser. I recognize him. Bill Jude, Angel Zapata, Zane Saeed, Doug Ford, Montana Molby, Kevin G, Dustin Sand, Colin G, Tony, and SDL78. Once again, if you didn't hear your name, there's plenty of other opportunities from Android Authority in the future for giveaways. And if you did hear your name, I'll be contacting you very shortly at the email address you have registered on the Discuss comment system. And you can get your code and go use your $10 and have fun. All right, so let's talk about some app updates. Scott Anderson's favorite part of the show.
So we got some new stuff in the Google Plus app update. First of all, when you launch the app, it now, with the last update, when you launch the app, the stream wouldn't refresh, which was annoying. You'd have to click the refresh button. It'd say tap here to refresh. Well, now it refreshes right away when you launch the app. That's nice. You can also delete photos from Photos View, which, again, is nice. Performance improvements. Also, global notifications. So if you see a notification on desktop, then it will get taken away from the mobile. So that's good. Google Music got updated. You can keep music on your device a lot quicker. You can have, there's a low, medium, and high bandwidth setting for mobile bandwidth usage, search quality improvements, and overall reduced data, which is always nice with those low data caps. Also, Google released Google Cloud Print. This was a nice feature. There were some third-party apps that would hook into the printing service before, and now Google has released their own official one. Kind of neat, works very simplistic, very easy to use. But who prints things these days? Do you guys print things?
Hardly ever.
Okay.
Yeah, Scott, I was trying to think when I installed that app. I was like, wow, this is so cool. I've wanted this for so long, and then I remembered, wait a second, I used to use the third-party version of this a year ago. Why haven't I used it in a year? Oh, that's right, I don't print anymore. But, if I'm ever out and about and I need to print something on my home that's waiting for me when I get home or something, I can. It's an added bonus feature. I don't know how often I'll use it. At work, I print more than I do home, but still not that often.
It is worth noting that Google just struck a deal with HP, along with bringing Google Apps to a lot of different places as far as enterprise goes. So this is a really timely kind of update for that to take place.
Yeah, and then Press got updated. John, I know you use Press.
Yeah, they did have a couple of UI enhancements, including drop downs to get to your feeds a little bit faster, where it used to take you to a different view. But the biggest thing worth noting is that they're adding support for Feed Wrangler and Feed Bin. Both of those are actually subscription models, but the app also knows that they're going to be adding support for Fever and Feedly in the near future, and Feedly's actually going to be a free model that's similar to Google Reader as a backend. That's the main thing that's worth noting, is even if you don't use Press, we're about 2 weeks away from the Google Reader shutdown, so all of your favorite RSS readers are very likely to get an update very soon. And on your end as a user, you need to make sure you decide which one that you want to use and get yourself ready to migrate away from Google Reader in the process. Get your feeds migrated over to Feedly or wherever you want to use, and go ahead and make sure that's ready, because they're ready to swap over to this now.
Cool.
And we did have some device news, kind of small device news. Is the Galaxy S4 Zoom. It is official, and it is a phone and camera hybrid, because we all love hybrids. This one kind of rounds out the whole Galaxy S4 lineup, which we have the S4, the S4 Mini, the S4 Active. Now we have the S4 Zoom, and you also have the S4 Google Experience Edition. But this one's going to come with a 4.3-inch QHD display, a 1.5 gigahertz dual-core processor, 1.5 gigabytes of RAM, 8 gigabytes of onboard memory with an SD card slot, 16 megapixel camera with 10 times optical zoom and optical image stabilization. So the camera on it actually should be very nice. And of course, you got all the usual connectivity in a phone, which is LTE, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or an NFC. And oddly, they have an event scheduled for June 20th in London to announce. We really don't know what they're going to announce, because ever since they've scheduled that event, they've already officially announced 3 phones and 2 tablets. So rumors are pointing toward there also being a Galaxy Camera 2 successor, which is kind of the non-phone version of this, I would think. And that kind of rounds out your devices. So it'd be interesting to know what the users think on this one. Kind of all of the S4, not just the S4 anymore. You know, the Galaxy S lineup is branching out to be, you know, in addition to the S4, a bunch of niche devices that kind of cater to a very specific usage scenario. You know, I'm kind of worried that Samsung's running the risk with so many devices that they're spreading the resources so thin on the software side, because, you know, it's tended to be in the past where if you didn't get a flagship Samsung device, you're just not getting software support. And I think that's the direction.
Flagship Samsung device, you're not getting very good software support.
That's true, but you know, the S4 and the flagship models are really the only ones that really get decent software support, and everything else is just
whatever number.
And everything else is just kind of forgotten about. I think that's the area that they need to improve on, is making sure that, because there are a lot of countries where people just can't afford to have a flagship device, but they deserve to have a really premium software experience on the phone. I think that's where the market needs to head, because nobody's really done that on the low end. I think there's money to be made like that.
Yeah.
Instead of just throwing devices out every month.
We talked about this a little bit last week, but it's because the manufacturers aren't really held accountable for the quality of the devices. The carriers are. So until Samsung and HTC and LG and Motorola are the people who get the phone call when somebody's upset with the device, instead of Verizon and Sprint and T-Mobile and AT&T, what do they care?
Yeah, they just want to sell as many and not necessarily. I think that the low end needs to have what Samsung did with the high end, is have a consolidated, brand recognition, where people, even if they're talking about a good, solid for the money device, they know to get a Samsung, whatever they decide to call it, because that's, if you can dominate the low end and get brand recognition on that, just like you do with the high end, then they could really open themselves up to a continual, brand loyalty.
Yeah. Getting into some industry news, T-Mobile and AT&T are expanding their LTE rollouts, adding a whole bunch more cities for both carriers. Meanwhile, in the ongoing drama over who's going to buy Sprint and Clearwire, Clearwire's board is now recommending that they accept Dish Network's offer for about 49.5% of the company. Dish is offering market value, and Sprint is offering about $1.10 per share below market value, which is about a quarter of the value of the company below market. So Clearwire's board is recommending to the shareholders that they vote for the Dish Network deal. To be clear, Dish isn't trying to buy out Clearwire with this. They're trying to buy half of Clearwire. Sprint still owns the other half one way or the other. Meanwhile, SoftBank is upping their offer for Sprint up to $21.6 billion, or still just under $5 billion less than Dish Network's offer to buy Sprint. So if Dish can scoop up Clearwire, that definitely makes them a much smarter fit for Sprint. Meanwhile, if SoftBank can't get their hands on Sprint, they apparently are looking at a potential T-Mobile buyout, which would definitely make Deutsche Telekom happy, because they've been trying to get rid of the company forever. But Otherwise, a lot of interesting back and forth between SoftBank and Dish Network fighting over Sprint right now. So it'll be interesting to see who comes out on top of that. And hopefully, Sprint can kind of put their crap back in order once that ends. So, Scott, how are things going in the root and ramen world?
Dan, I don't know if Scott's prepared to talk about rootin' and ramen.
Not this week, anyways.
All right, so I'll cover rootin' and ramen. Scott, you make your bed next week. All right, if you promise to make your bed, I'll cover rootin' and ramen for you. All right, so Cyanogen, a.k.a. Steve Kondik, took to Google Plus this week to demonstrate something that he hopes to get merged into mainline Cyanogen mod, and that is incognito mode for apps. And basically, it does exactly what it sounds. It allows for you to take privacy into your own hands. It gives you a mode where you can choose to deny applications access to your personal data, such as your messages, your contacts, your call logs. So hopefully this gets implemented in the future. And it's you can't pick and choose. You want it turned on for this app but not that app, and this app but not that app. It's a one-size-fits-all. You either enable incognito for everything or you don't. So I think this is very cool. It'll be interesting, how many people start to use it, since so many apps out there, request this type of data, so many freemium apps request this so they can, sell your data. I would use it, and I would turn it on in a heartbeat, and if it does get merged into mainline CM.
I feel like it would break tons of applications.
Unless it's feeding them unless it's feeding them bad data. I'm not sure on the implementation of it.
Well, no, even still, something like, say, a contact replacement app.
Well, obviously, if you're using a contact replacement app, you probably can't use incognito mode.
Right, but I mean, this is a huge swath of regular use cases that are just broken by this. I don't really see this as something that's beneficial.
Well, you remember that Cyanogen mod is only out of 1 billion users, there's only 5 million people using Cyanogen mod or so.
Even still, they've looked at some rather radical things before and backed off when Google or other powers that be more or less said that's a bad idea, don't do it. I definitely think that's a bad idea, don't do it. I get that everybody's all about privacy and blah blah blah, but come on.
And that's an interesting thought. I do.
It's one thing to
I do see your point, Dan, but I'd like to be in control of my data. I think that I don't know. I'm curious to see if it pans out, if it does make it into mainline CM.
I think the obvious answer to this problem is actually something you could cherry pick from BlackBerry, where BlackBerry actually did allow you to have individual control of permission for their apps. And a lot of that was because they did it for enterprise reasons, but they, if Google did this as a, but then you run into the issues of developers being able to monetize because users could actually, cut off a channel for monetization from them. So that's a real sticky issue. Yeah.
All right. So in other Rootin' and Ramen news, not so much Rootin' and Ramen, but developer news, Sony opened up their smartwatch program and basically said to developers, have at it. They posted the open source binaries and code examples up on their website, and they're basically telling developers to go ahead and flash alternative firmware, which is Rootin' and Ramen, but not the same Rootin' and Ramen that we would consider Android Rootin' and Ramen. You can see the details for more information at Sony Developer World if you're interested. And this is very cool for wearable tech, because right now not a whole lot of wearable tech is open source. So this is great for developers to basically push wearable technology or the Sony's smartwatch to the next level. Pebble doesn't. Pebble's not open source, but Pebble's also very popular. So this is Sony basically saying, hey, wait a second, we're not the only smartwatch out there, and we're open source now. And in other Rootin' and Ramen news, one of my favorite Android ROMs, Paranoid Android, open sourced their increasingly popular Halo concept. And if you're not familiar, Halo is think of it as Facebook chat heads for everything and not just chat. It is for every app that there is. It works with every app. It's a way to view your notifications and open the app that produced the notification in a separate window on top of what you're already viewing. So let's say I'm listening to music or scrolling through my playlist on Google Play Music All Access. Dan sends me an email. I get a Gmail notification. Normally I would have to stop looking at the playlist to read and respond to Dan's email. Now I can basically have that still stay there and a window pop up and reply to Dan's email if I want, all without having to leave Play Access. So there's tons of it. I don't know if that was the greatest example, but it's a very neat feature. It's probably coming to a custom ROM near you, even if it isn't Paranoid Android. A lot of random ROMs are implementing it right now. So go ahead and check that out and let us know what you think. I think it's a pretty revolutionary concept into notifications and multi-window support, because it is multi-window and it's not Samsung's implementation of multi-window.
Not at all.
What?
Not at all, and it's substantially better because your multi-window is on Samsung is clumsy, really clumsy.
And speaking of revolutionary concepts, we had a few people comment at the beginning of the show saying, "Uh-oh, we missed the Apple iOS segment of the show." You did not. We're gonna talk about why Dan, John, Scott, and myself are going to be switching to iOS 7 and leaving Android. I can't finish that sentence. So John, let's talk about, since you're Johnny Frank. You're kind of similarly named to Johnny Ives.
That's true.
Let's have the meeting of the Johns. Let us know what's coming with iOS 7 and why do we want it and why we don't want it. Why do we love it? Why do we hate it?
Why do we love and hate it? I'm going to enter a screen share here to kind of just give a visual representation of.
All right. So those of you that are listening on SoundCloud or another podcast later, John's going to show us some screenshots. So
I'm going to try to describe what you're looking at.
Okay.
Really kind of rapid fire, just so the podcast listeners aren't left out completely. But we'll just kind of cover it real quick. All right. So here we go. The first thing you're going to see is the iOS 7, obviously. The lock screen is completely different. It gets rid of the kind of semi-transparent gradients and everything. It's got a flat bar with text and type.
John, I want to interrupt you here. I think you actually put up a ice cream sandwich lock screen there. You're showing the wrong one, buddy.
I'm sorry. I have to apologize. There's some definite similarities. I don't think that putting a bubble-style live wallpaper helped them, as far as comparing the ice cream sandwich fan, because that's what they were showing off the live wallpaper that they introduced. They call it Parallax, but it's a gyroscope. It's a live wallpaper that pulls off the gyroscope sensor and actually moves with the phone. It actually looks almost like something Samsung would do, just kind of out of gimmicky.
Am I correct in assuming that you no longer swipe from left to right to open the device?
You still swipe from left to right. That's actually the interesting part.
It's anywhere on the screen, though.
Arrow at the bottom?
It's anywhere on the screen, though.
Yeah, because that was a big patent, wasn't it?
That's the interesting thing, is that it looks like you would swipe up, but that's actually to take you to Control Center. So it's still actually left to right, and it does still have the.
It says slide to unlock and has an up arrow, and I slide from left to right. This is intuitive from Apple?
I guess so. Now the camera, oddly, I'm not exactly sure how you unlock straight to the camera. I would guess you drag it, but I'm not exactly sure.
To where?
I guess you would drag that up, and the slide to unlock is still left to right. The arrow on the bottom is actually to open up their new control center directly from the lock screen.
So you know something else that reminds me of Android is not because of the bubble circle background, not because of the minimal look of the top and the bottom, the unlocking, but the time centered in the middle with the thin. I mean, it's not Roboto, but it's pretty damn well close to looking like Roboto. Like
it looks like a very thin kind of derivative of Helvetica. If anyone.
Yeah, but I mean, a thin time in the middle with the date underneath it. I mean, I'm sorry, that this looks like what we've been using for the past 2 years.
So I'm gonna pop over.
No dash cut.
I'm gonna pop over to the home screen. So the icons, the home screen itself has been kind of drastically changed, and
people are Samsung designers help.
People are in a constant debate over whether they like the icons better or whether the colors, the shapes are it's minimal in shape, like the weather, and the majority of them are very simplistic. In the color palette is kind of all over the place, but.
Now, Dan, I'm sorry. Now, John, correct me if I'm wrong here. I heard that what they did to design these icons is that Johnny Ives actually looked at Matias Duarte's shirt collection and decided to use the colors on his shirts to color the icons on the iOS home screen. Is that true or false?
Well, Matias to be fair, Matias's shirt collection pretty much covers every color in the spectrum, so it's hard to get away from that. But the curious part, and just as an example of what you're looking at, if you look at the weather icon and the App Store icon as an example, the gradients are actually in different directions. Like one of them, the shiny gradient comes from the bottom to top, and then the App Store one, it comes from top to bottom. And you see that in a couple of different ones. The mail icon comes from bottom to top too, and the a couple other ones. It kind of makes you curious because with iOS 6 and below, they always had that top gradient that was very consistent in iconography on all of their, and that's kind of curious. It makes you wonder if they were really designed at the same place, or if it was kind of a design by committee thing.
Looks
all the icons,
and it's really 12. This is like a 4th grade project.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, does Johnny Ives have any children, and did he go up to his son or daughter and say, "Hey, go get your fluorescent colors. We got work to do"?
It's really this is probably the biggest point of debate over a lot of the. Not just the fans of it, but a lot of the analysts and the blogs and everything that are taking to it is that the icons may be a step back. Not necessarily the concept behind going flat with the icons, but how they implemented them. A lot of them just look like they changed it for the sake of change and not really designed it.
It's like, hey, listen, we haven't changed shit in 5 years. 6 years, I'm sorry, in 6 years, let's go ahead and just change everything with the icon colors because we can.
Yeah, and there's no sort of theme to it. Safari and Calendar and Photos and Newsstand and a couple others are white backgrounds with random crap on top of them. And then everything else is a colored background with a couple of them are colored with just white on them.
What I want to talk about is there's a lot of users that have been using it. Okay, so a lot of users on iOS, a lot of people are used to what they're using. So will this be successful, and will this be something that will push Apple, into a higher percentage and fight back?
It's also worth noting that this is, essentially beta software. They have time to listen to feedback and change some of the things about it.
Yeah, they did that really nice with Apple Maps, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a point of debate whether they actually will. But if enough people, complain about it, I do think I do think a lot of these things are moving in the right direction. And to be honest, with Android, when they redesigned and kind of came up with the hollow theme, Ice Cream Sandwich is the first one that the majority of people saw, but really Honeycomb was the first one that really introduced that design language. And Honeycomb was a little bit overdone and too much of that kind of Tron flat boxy look. So if Apple is smart enough to really evolve, they can, there's still refinement to be done.
Yeah,
So,
but Apple's big thing is, ooh, we're a design company. Everything we touch is pretty and lovely and awesome, and this is just ugly.
It is interesting, and I'm curious. It's really hard to tell so far, and I'm going to pop to the next slide. This is the new camera, by the way. But what's going to be interesting about it is really when it gets in the hands of average users, because right now you're talking about really tech, kind of guys. This isn't the casual average fan that's analyzing this. You're going to have to see how the users react.
I don't have a problem with the camera software.
The camera is actually pretty improved. You can swipe over to go directly to, say, a square image or video or photo. It's actually been simplified a lot. It just gets rid of the really big gradients and everything. So I don't think there's a lot to mention because the camera hasn't really changed much in functionality. Now, just demonstrating this real quick, you can implement filters. TouchWiz does this. It actually has filters built into the camera too.
Well, so does stock Android. The filters came out with the ice cream sandwich. So we've had that for 2 years.
The difference with stock Android actually does it in the gallery, and this is done on the camera.
So it's done live.
Yeah, and that's how Samsung does it too. To me, I prefer it to be in the gallery because, to me, I use the camera as a point and shoot. I don't want to premeditate. If I wanted to premeditate taking a picture, I would get a real camera, personally. I just don't, because they take better pictures. It's not so much that I don't necessarily value having image filters. I just think that a phone camera primary functionality is that you need a camera right then at that very moment to take a picture very quickly. It's not so much that, if I wanted to think it out, then I would just think it out and use a better camera, because phone cameras still aren't on, they're better, but they're not, like an HD, like a really high quality photo.
Yeah.
No, they already took 650 pictures with that camera.
Apparently, but this is part of their camera roll. And another thing that's worth kind of thinking about, you can see at the very top that they're kind of using the back up caret that doesn't have that really embedded looking raised button look. And it's using a lot more typography.
Wait, tell me more about how you navigate through Android apps.
Well, this is interesting because when you're talking about applications or developers that kind of focus on cross-platform, if you look, the camera roll is actually, when you hit back, the text is telling you where it's going to go to. If you go back, where on Android, on the action bar, the text actually tells you where you are. So it's going to be interesting how many developers kind of screw this up for each platform.
Oh, wait. Let's go back to the camera roll, not you're in the camera roll.
Yeah, that's not where you are. That's where it's going to take you. So you're probably going to have developers that get confused as to which to put up there. And that's kind of sad because, we all know that a lot of applications get ported to Android from iOS.
So you hit back right there because the back is telling you that back is camera roll.
Yeah, the back is telling, and I don't really think either one of them is necessarily wrong. I just hate the fact that you have the potential for it to be different than what the user interface's convention is going to be if you're talking about a developer that's developing for different platforms. And the other question mark is
just the done button.
Well, that's actually the point of editing an image right there. That's what this screenshot's of. And the other thing
to start editing it.
The other thing that kind of makes me curious about this.
Done editing.
Yeah, when you're done editing, I guess.
So both camera roll and done take you back to the camera roll.
No, done. Well, yeah, I guess done technically would take you back to it, but.
It would be done editing. So what would you do once you hit it?
Well, in the case of iOS, in the case of iOS, you have to provide a back because there is no back on the.
Oh, that's right. Because there's no back.
So it makes sense that they did it. It's just then the other thing that kind of makes me curious is you got 3 different types of typography on the top bar right there.
Yeah.
And you really don't have a clear touch delegate. But the thing about that is not so much that it's typography; it's that what is it going to look like when translations come to play in languages that have where a word is going to be substantially longer than that? Is it going to be a scrolling marquee of text, or is it going to be, you know what I mean? That's a legitimate concern. I think that developers are probably going to resort to having to use iconography instead of text in situations where they can't fit everything on the top bar.
Yeah, I mean, even on this one, it already looks bad with camera roll. But
it's kind of cluttered. It's kind of cluttered like that, and it's really not big text. It's not a long description or anything. It just makes you kind of wonder when you translate it into Norwegian, what's it going to look like. So, AirDrop is another one that they announced, and what AirDrop does is very similar to Groupcast on Samsung, where it uses Wi-Fi and Bluetooth to be able to share directly with iOS or Mac users. So what you're going to do is it's going to use kind of like it doesn't require you to be connected to a Wi-Fi network. I don't think it actually can use the network, but it's very similar to Wi-Fi Direct, where you're going to be able to send people images and multiple people images.
So it's Wi-Fi Direct, and so it's something else that we've had.
It's Apple's totally proprietary and unnecessary implementation of Wi-Fi Direct.
It essentially is. It's functionally the same as Wi-Fi Direct, and this is their jab. They were taking an NFC where you don't have to touch phones together. But the thing about it is that Groupcast does the exact same thing, but the other part of it is NFC isn't just used to share photos or applications, is the thing about it. NFC, when we went to the Big Android Barbecue, they used it, as an identification method where people would touch a paper slip that was NFC enabled and actually get your information directly from that. You have the potential for mobile payments. You have the potential for, even if you wanted to, say, put a NFC tag on the outside of a restaurant so it would automatically let people check in on Foursquare or something like that. NFC has a lot more direct capabilities because it doesn't require you to initiate a connection. The music application has been, pretty much redesigned, and another thing is they announced iTunes Radio. iTunes Radio is very similar to Pandora, how it is basically a DJ that comes up with playlists based upon your music interest, and you can kind of see where they're going with the user interface inside applications. And I do think it's a big step forward for them over the skeuomorphic kind of look of the fake leather and paper and all of those backgrounds. It's very typographic. It's very thin. It's very kind of light. But also the other thing worth noting is in the majority of their applications, the backgrounds are pure white in nearly everything. It almost reminds you of the first iPod, in user interface. You can see the bottom where they have the 5 options on the bottom kind of action bar that they have. That has remained functionally almost exactly the same as the last one, so the users shouldn't get thrown off too much by it. It's just a lot more typographic without having the raised button look. I do think that's a better look for them than it was. And so we'll just keep moving on this. This is what they call Control Center. And Control Center is essentially very, very similar to how notification toggles are done in Android. In this case, what you're doing is swiping up from the bottom. It does, kind of include a set amount of toggles. It doesn't really let you customize them.
No way. Apple doesn't let you customize things.
So what you see is what you get on there. I do think it's good that they have those options on there. It would be nice if you could customize them. And it's also kind of odd that it's low. You have the brightness and the music volume sliders in completely different places, and it would be. It's kind of interesting that you've got toggles and AirDrop and AirPlay and things. It looks very similar to TouchWiz's notification area, where it's all kind of jumbled up in weird place. TouchWiz
however, TouchWiz looks disgusting. That actually
TouchWiz looks disgusting. This is actually attractive.
Yeah,
but,
that looks good.
TouchWiz is what I'm trying to say with TouchWiz is TouchWiz does it in a really cluttered, kind of ugly and disjointed kind of way. and it kind of reminds me of that, where you like the fact that it's functional, but it's not attractive. Like it could be done better, like it could be organized better, and that's yeah, it's cluttered and it doesn't really flow.
I'm going to disagree. I love the way that looks. I think it's very minimal looking. I love the icons.
I like
I like it.
I do very much like the look of it. I think the organization just needs to be a little bit better.
Yeah,
but we've had custom toggles and custom ROMs since Froyo, thanks to CyanogenMod. And
another prop that I'll give them on this is with 4.2, the way Google did it, and of course custom ROMs change it, but when you hit Wi-Fi on Google's method, it just takes you to the Wi-Fi settings, where this is a direct toggle.
No, not well. In 4.2, they changed that, John.
Yeah, I mean the way that Google initially implemented it took you, and that was kind of
4.2.2. I mean.
Yeah, and the way that they did that was Google shouldn't have done it like that initially. So I'll give them props for getting that right. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Where Wi-Fi, it just turns on your Wi-Fi. It doesn't take you to settings.
It's a toggle on Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, though.
Props for learning from the mistakes that Google made over a year ago. Way to go, Adam. You didn't make the same mistakes that some other company did. Going back to that last one, though.
These next screenshots, I'm going to just kind of rapidly go through just to get an idea of the user interface. Because the convention's very much the same as current iOS. It looks a lot different. It's more typography. The font's bigger, it's thinner, and
it's all a lot cleaner.
It is a lot cleaner. If you see like Start and Lap, it's very minimal. I really like it. Actually, it's very minimal. It reminds you of Windows Phone and Hollow in the way that they go with very thin fonts, and it's just not. It's not trying to be something it's not.
You know what? The top half of that reminds me of Android. It reminds me of the new stopwatch clock alarm, in Android.
It does. And to be fair, I think Windows really kind of got this kind of look first. The really typographic, focus. And Windows kind of went a little bit too far on the flat UI. I mean, with the tiles, and it's kind of really mono. When you customize it with blue tiles, your whole phone experience just becomes blue everywhere. Where mixing and matching the colors and the fonts and everything has been something that actually Android and iOS, by the look of it, have kind of improved on it. It's flat and it's minimal, but it's not like nauseatingly minimal where it doesn't have any depth to it.
Yeah.
And that's the part with Windows. That's the part with Windows Phone that I think they need to improve on, is that the OS is simple and it's flat, but it doesn't have any depth to it whatsoever.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect representation right there of how very flat it is. The dialer is very flat looking. I don't like the dialer.
The part that confuses me with the dialer is why they went with transparency on the rings, because if you have somebody with a really light colored wallpaper, it's going to kind of, and that also kind of goes back to a lot of the other things that they did with a lot of transparency with it. But with transparency is one of those things that you have to be very careful with unless you're implementing drop shadows. Kind of like on icon text on the launcher.
Yeah.
Something that you have to be really careful with, unless you're doing something with drop shadows. The messaging app, to me, compared to their last messaging app, is a huge improvement.
Oh, that's a major improvement. I like that a lot. I'm a big fan of the new messaging app compared to the old.
Because if you look at like autocorrect, and see the bubbles, it just gets nauseating for so long. And I really think their messaging app is beautiful compared to what it was.
Oh yeah, it's a huge improvement.
And the message dialogue boxes, you don't see the big embedded.
I like that keyboard, John.
Yeah, it's got a thin font. It has a really kind of light feel to it without being. The other thing I'd like to see them do on the keyboard is similar to other ones where it doesn't differentiate with lowercase and uppercase.
I don't
calendar
like on Android how you can push and hold the top row to get numbers.
Yeah, I think the keyboard could. I really would have liked to see them open up to third-party keyboards. The calendar app, to me, was probably the best improvement of an application that they showed. Because if you look at this calendar app with the week view and everything, that's one area that I wish Google would focus on a little bit more is their calendar.
Yeah.
But I actually think the calendar on this is very attractive. And it's
I'll agree. I like the calendar.
Minimal, and the month views and everything just kind of get it right. I do think that they did a very good job with the calendar application. And most of these applications, the applications themselves actually look like a big improvement. I do like what they're doing with the minimal look. This is your notification center, and it splits into tabs. You have today and all and missed notifications. And it's very, when you look at it compared to Android's notification area, it's very kind of rich. And it's rich, but it's also kind of like, if you have a ton of notifications, you're not going to be able to get to them very quickly, but it does show a lot of content in the notification area. So it's going to be, it's a different approach, but it's, whether it's to the user's preference is going to have to kind of, you'll have to see what the feedback is.
Okay. So let's
So just quick overview. That's really the big changes, aside from, as you can see here, Safari is getting kind of a tab layout, and they've
so there's a lot of changes happening with iOS. The rumors were true. The icons are all different. It's a much flatter, more minimal design. Me being a fan of minimal themes for Android, stock Android, I don't like Sense. I don't like TouchWiz. I don't like anything that isn't stock Android or AOSP based. I like minimal Android. So I'm a fan of the new iOS 7, except for the home screen icons. I mean, everything else I like. I don't see anything wrong with anything else. I mean, there's maybe a tiny little thing here or there, but Android has a tiny little thing here or there that isn't perfect either. So if we could take away the icons, I'd love it, and I wouldn't. I mean, I don't like the platform. I'm not going to drop Android. Don't get me wrong, but I love the new design. I think it's great. They have a new design. It's not 6 years old anymore. They needed to do this. I'm happy.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Apart from the really kind of random iconography, everything else about it is clean, it's uniform, it's unified, it's straightforward, it's very Apple. And, I mean, it looks nice. It really does. Like you said, I'm not about to rush out and get Apple. I don't really care for the platform. Apple didn't really announce anything interesting, special, existing insofar as developer options or new features or new service. Well, I guess iTunes Radio is a new service, but really iTunes Radio and a polish on the UI is all they have to offer for innovation.
But hey, the new Mac Pro, that was their big claim to fame, is innovation. But we're not talking about PCs this show. So John, after you have an extensive review, you've obviously taken a lot of time to look through iOS 7. What's your quick and dirty final thoughts on it?
Final thoughts. I think that it looks a lot better. It does look a lot better than the skeuomorphic. And to be fair, I hate skeuomorphic UIs. Even with my desktop with Linux, I've always gone for the minimal look. But the biggest question mark that I have with iOS isn't so much, what did they do? What are they going to do? Because Apple's always been, this is what you've got, deal with it, and the question is how the average user is going to respond. I think the enthusiasts are really going to like it because it does look cleaner, it does look fresher. I think the ones that bought it for familiarity and building off of their previous experience with iOS is probably going to see this and boot it up and get absolutely frightened by it. And that's not just because of the way the UI is. That's because people are so scared when they see change. And because it's a change, I think people are going to, you're always going to have people that, even when Google updates something, you have people that are half and half. And the last point is the question mark of, is Samsung going to be looking at this, questioning and trying to do something with TouchWiz, because we all know that they've tended to use some influence. I think that one benefit of iOS being so white, like so many white backgrounds, is Samsung would be committing suicide to themselves if they implemented it, because their LED displays, use substantially more power producing the color white than any other one. So I don't even think Samsung's going to have much that they can take from this, because they would completely kill their user experience. So
before we get to Scott's thoughts, I hope that Samsung does something, because their UI is just old and outdated as iOS 6 and below. So I think they need to do something.
I hope this is motivation for them. I just hope they don't I hope that, if Samsung feels that, Apple felt the need to step up because of Google, Samsung doesn't need to necessarily feel the need to step up because of Apple. Samsung needs to cut the middleman out and be more like Google and just be done with it. Is my personal opinion of it.
Scott, are you switching to iOS?
No, but with regards to third-party device manufacturers or whatever, leave it stock, let the user decide what they want their phone to look like in the end. Pretty much. I like the new look. I think it's going to piss a lot of people off, because everybody's been very used to something, and it hasn't changed for so many years. This is a very big change, especially the transparency. That will make people angry. But yeah, not changing.
All right. Well, I see we have a lot of comments, basically showing me. I'm not going to repeat what they say, because there's some choice words that well, I'm just going to say I'm not going to repeat them. But it obviously shows that there's fanboys, air quotes for you guys listening, that exist on both sides of the spectrum. Either you love the platform you use every day and you hate the competitor, or you don't care and it's a mobile platform and you use what you like. So I think that's what it boils down to. If you like Android, you're going to use Android. If you like iOS, you're going to use iOS. It all boils down to your own personal preference, and some platforms allow you more personal preferences than others. So if there isn't any other questions, I see, basically, I'm looking down through the comment list here, and a whole bunch of comments on iOS and Android in general. No major pressing questions. Actually, you know what? Just a thought here. So, iPhones generally have pretty good battery life. Well, Christian Claus wants to know, is Apple's iPhone 5 LCD, AMOLED, or LCD? Because all that white is such a battery hog, and that is true. White is a battery hog, but that depends on your screen.
LCD, there's no difference whatsoever producing colors, because LCD is backlit 100% of the time.
Yeah, I think that's why he was asking. He wanted to know if it was LCD or AMOLED.
And AMOLED produce black
was
without any color at all. The thing is, the iPhone is neither of these. It's IPS. So, kind of an irrelevant debate. IPS is powered slightly differently. It's still backlit, but realistically, projecting the white is not any more battery consuming than any other color for IPS displays either.
And AMOLED displays use roughly 3 times as much power producing white than it does any other color, because it requires every single subpixel has to fire full force, basically. Where, so essentially, with OLED, you would want to have a dark theme, period, and preferably.
Yeah. Okay, so Scott. Where do people find us when they're not watching us on the YouTubes or the Google Pluses?
YouTube, obviously, like you just said. You can listen to us on SoundCloud, Podbean, iTunes. SoundCloud is kind of where it's at. I do like their mobile app right now. Also, AndroidAuthority.com. Check us out there. We do a post after every show. And I'm going to start doing something new. I did a test of it on the last episode. I'm going to segment the show on YouTube and give you segmented things about when we talk about things, because I know that it's a long show, and if you want to listen to one thing, then go ahead. But I'll be segmenting the show, so.
So
we'll
Scott, any chance we can get that awesome segmentation on SoundCloud?
Ooh. I don't know. I'll look into it.
Okay, all right. So more Android Authority on-air features coming at you, thanks to the man, the myth, the non-bed maker, Scott Anderson. All right.
Oh.
Have a good night, everybody. Great weekend. Long live Android. I mean iOS 7 or whatever you choose. Good night.